What is up, Flannelverse? Welcome to Flannel Up and Showdown for Sunday Night Football, the first edition of the Sunday Night Football show. It's going to be just like the Monday night, Thursday night, and I guess Friday night was the other one this week. It's going to be just like those shows. We're going to go position by position, quarterback, running back, receivers, tight ends, defense, and kickers. I'll go over kind of my plans for how I'm getting different on this slate. Hopefully it goes better than making the assumption that the Eagles defense is elite. Hopefully we go better than that this week, or tonight, I should say. We'll all answer any questions at the end. We'll make some lineups on DraftKings. Happy to answer any questions you have on FanDuel as well. But excited to get into it. This is a fun slate. We get a lot of ugly games on these island slates. Getting Rams, Lions, two pretty damn good teams. Should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to playing this one. But yeah, I do want to start before we get into the games. I have what I think is a very exciting announcement. I am very excited about starting tomorrow at noon Eastern, 11 o'clock Real America time. I will be going live with Adam, Ship My Money Share. Used to work with Adam at Stochastic. We haven't done a ton of NFL content together. We did a ton of MLB content together last year, but I always really enjoyed working with Adam. So I reached out to him to see if maybe we could collaborate on doing some Showdown content. So we're going to be doing, at least for a little while, Monday mid-morning and Thursday mid-morning. We're going to do some content for Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football Showdown slates earlier in the day, do a little bit of a breakdown. I'm going to do write-ups the night before, so I'll be fully prepared mid-morning and get to talk with Adam, go over the slates with Adam, who is a very, very sharp DFS player. So looking forward to working with Adam on those Mondays and Thursdays. We'll see how it goes. We're both kind of non-committal to doing it long-term. See how it goes, see if we enjoy doing that show. But I think we will. I really enjoy working with Adam. Maybe we won't be able to do every Monday and Thursday, but at least in the short term, we're going to try to do it. And don't know all the logistics yet. It might be hopefully simulcast on this channel and the Endgame Syndicate channel. It will at least be on this channel tomorrow. So that's the plan for tomorrow. I'll still be doing the show, before lock on this channel as well to go over the slate. But thought that'll be fun just to add a little wrinkle, add Adam's thoughts, because he is one of the sharper content creators I know. All right, let's start with quarterbacks. And again, it's pretty straightforward. Two of the better projected plays on the straight. Not as exciting as like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Neither of these quarterbacks runs at all, but both pretty fair point per dollar plays. Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. Goff is 9,000, Stafford 8,800. Neither runs like at all. Both totally stashy quarterbacks. So honestly, I'm not as enthused about these quarterbacks as I was about playing Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. I still will have a good amount, probably in about half my lineups. I would guess I'll have each of these guys in about half my lineups. If I were just going to play one, I think it would be Jared Goff, just because he has such a better matchup. The Rams defense so much worse than the Lions defense. I actually think the Lions improved quite a bit at cornerback. So I think it's a much easier matchup for Jared Goff. Now, I think Matthew Stafford probably the better quarterback, but I still think I'm probably more inclined to play some Goff in this matchup than Stafford, just because it is such a great matchup. But this is, both teams have really high implied totals. This is the highest over-under of the entire weekend. So this game, pretty high expectations as far as scoring goes. I agree. Thank you for this. Cats is a legend. Smash the like button. Would appreciate that. Yes. I should mention that early in the show. Appreciate anybody subscribing. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, up to 2,356 subscribers. Really excited about the growth of this channel since I started doing DFS content, because I love doing DFS content. I'm excited to be doing it again, but I am still trying to grow the channel. Still a very small channel. So would appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment, all that good stuff. It all really does go a long way. Appreciate you. Also, I should mention, I am using fantasy points tools right now. As we see on the screen, these are fantasy points projections. I'll probably from time to time bring up the fantasy points data suite, which is really in-depth NFL data, and it updates really quickly. Like they had Thursday Night Football stuff on Friday, so they go really in-depth in the weeds in NFL data. So if you're into that kind of stuff, you can use promo code FlannelMan, 25% off if you use that promo code, whatever package you want. You can get the content packages where I do my write-ups for each of these Showdown slates. All that is there. 25% off using promo code FlannelMan. All right. So again, I'll probably have each of these quarterbacks in about 50% of my lineups. I'm not super excited about them. We do have many solid options from skill position players. We have several great receivers, tight ends, et cetera, who I think could outscore these quarterbacks. So I'm not as excited about them as I was with Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. But quarterbacks are generally you generally want at least one quarterback in your showdown lineups. So I'll probably have 50 to 60%. Maybe I won't have a quarterback in every single lineup tonight, honestly. But I think I'll probably have about 50% of each quarterback. Some of my lineups will have none, some will have both. It'll be a mix. But as far as correlations go, if you're playing these quarterbacks, you should stack them always. Neither of them runs at all. So it's very difficult to see either of them being in the winning lineup without being stacked with a pass catcher. And if they're in the captain spot, either one of them, I want at least a double stack or more in the flex. So just because, again, if they're going to be the highest scoring player on the slate, which generally you need to be if you are going to be in the winning lineup as a captain, you need to put up a lot of points. And if you're not running, you're doing it through the air. And if you're too concentrated on one pass catcher, that pass catcher is going to outscore you. Just due to the scoring dynamics on DraftKings, you score more per catch. You get 8 point per reception. You also score more for each receiving yard, for each touchdown. So it's just really easy for the pass catchers to outscore the quarterback if it's too concentrated. So if you have the quarterback in the captain spot, you really have to assume that they're spreading the ball around quite a bit with these non-rushing quarterbacks. So if you have either of these quarterbacks in the captain spot, I would recommend having at least 2 pass catchers from their team in the flex. If they're in the flex, you could just have one pass catcher paired up with them. And I would qualify, I do think both Jahmyr Gibbs and Kyren Williams qualify as pass catchers in this sense. They're both used enough in the passing game that I think they work as stacking partners. What's up, Chris? Chase, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Would appreciate you guys liking the video. Helps me out. Don't really think I have that much more to say about the quarterbacks. I think we kind of know the story with the quarterbacks, right? They're both veterans. They've been around a long time. You kind of know who they are. They're pretty good. They're in great offenses. Should be able to put up some fantasy points. Neither of them is doing a lot on the ground. So that'll do for quarterbacks. We'll move on, talk about some of the running backs on the slate. So it is pretty interesting here. So Kyren Williams, you can see, is the higher projected running back, projects just better than Jahmyr Gibbs, which I think that kind of presumes that Kyren Williams is going to have a bigger workload than Jahmyr Gibbs. He's not going to be as efficient. I mean, you can see over here, actually, we do the Fantasy Points does the projected actual stats, which is kind of cool. You can see what they're thinking. Kyren Williams, 16.4 rushing attempts, 11.7 for Jahmyr Gibbs. So Jahmyr Gibbs getting, several fewer, a handful fewer rushing attempts than Kyren Williams is sort of the presumption. Jahmyr Gibbs, you can see 3.3 projected receptions. Kyren Williams, 2.2. That's really useful. I have not been using these stats over here, but that is useful to see what they're thinking, what actually goes into that projection. And you can see these two a little bit more involved in the passing game. Kind of interesting actually seeing Montgomery projected for just 0.6 receptions fewer than Kyren Williams. I still think you can use Kyren. I think he had some spike weeks as a receiver, but that is a closer projection than I thought when I looked at it earlier. But worth noting. So this assumes Kyren gets the bulk of the carries. Blake Corum projected for 6.4 rushing attempts. So not nothing. He's projected to be on the field a little bit. I like Kyren. He's only 8,000, but it is a tougher matchup for Kyren against Detroit than it is for the Detroit guys. In general, I think I am going to prefer the Detroit running backs, and we'll talk about some game theory related to how I'm playing those Detroit running backs later. But in general, Detroit, I looked at several offensive line rankings this offseason, and Detroit is supposed to be like the best offensive line in the NFL across the board. They're one of the top ranked offensive lines in the NFL. So I'm going to be pretty interested in playing these running backs. They're also facing a Rams defense that's just not that great. So you get great offensive line facing a bad defense, 2 pretty good running backs. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, a very, very exciting running back. So I do have a lot of interest in the Detroit running backs in particular. It's hard to go wrong with Kyren. You see his workload last year. He had one of the best workloads in the entire NFL. So I can't really tell you that I don't want to play Kyren. But I think I probably end up a little bit underweight to Kyren. He's only 8,000. So the price is pretty good for Kyron, but I would imagine I'm going to be slightly underweight there and hope that Blake Corum eats into that workload a little bit more than we're anticipating. He's going to get, mid 30s in projected ownership for Kyron. I think that feels about right. My guess is I come in a little bit underweight on that number, but I am going to be playing a ton of both Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I think they both could smash. So that's kind of the way I'm trying to differentiate myself. I'll spoiler. I'll just tell you now. The biggest way that I think I'm going to differentiate myself on this slate from the field, I'm going to be doing a lot of double running back from the same team lineups. I prefer doing it with Detroit. I think you could do it with the Rams if you do make the assumption that Kyron and Blake Corum are going to be splitting carries. It's a viable strategy to play both of the Rams running backs, but I really like it for the Lions because I could see a scenario where they are just able to bully the Rams defense with this offensive line. They're just running all over them all game. So kind of playing it through the assumption that they're just going to be pounding it, that the Lions are going to be biting kneecaps and pounding the rock on the ground, I think is, it's definitely not guaranteed. They have plenty of solid pass catching options as well on the Lions. But again, so similar to the last slate, I said I was playing it as though the Eagles defense was going to dominate. That did not happen. It was never likely to happen. So I want to be clear here. Most of what I'm talking about on this show is for the largest field GPPs. I don't think that the most likely scenario is that both Lions running backs are in the winning lineup, but I think that it's a scenario that happens a lot more than the field is going to play it. So we're trying to win these tournaments. You got to get a little bit different. You're not going to be able to play the most likely scenario, just jam all of the top projected plays. So I like the idea of that little bit of negative correlation playing those two Lions running backs because we've seen them split carries in the past. We know that they are capable of both running backs are capable of putting up a big game. I think that in this particular matchup, with a pretty bad Rams defense and with just how great their offensive line is, I think it's very viable that both of these Lions running backs could put up a big game. So the way I'm playing it is I'm playing them in the same lineup pretty frequently, and even with one of the Lions running backs in the captain spot, I think it's still viable to play both of them. Just assume that they have a huge game on the ground. So that is the big differentiator for me tonight. The big way that I'm trying to make my lineups different is just playing into that slight negative correlation and assuming that they're just have the same positive correlation of they're both super efficient on the ground. Dave Montgomery only 6,600. Kind of just kind of went over both of them. You can play them individually too. I'll probably have a good amount of each of them individually as well as together. And then Blake Corum, if you're not familiar with Blake Corum, he is basically a Kyron clone. It sounds like the coaching staff really loves him. They went out and got him, I think, to be that kind of one-to-one replacement if Kyron ever goes down, or if Kyron needs a breather. Maybe they lessen the workload on Blake Corum a little bit. They also, one of them, I can't remember which is which. Kyron is, I think, returning punts, and Blake Corum is returning kicks, or maybe vice versa. Either way, they're both involved in special teams as well. They're just really, really similar running backs, or at least that's the hope. Just seeing how successful Kyron was last year, I think that's what the Rams are sort of hoping for with Blake Corum. So for this game, we don't really know how much of a workload he's going to have to start the year. The assumption that we're making, that I think everybody across the board is making, I think it's a reasonable assumption, is that it's still Kyron's team. He was very good as the bell cow last year. They don't really have any reason to go elsewhere, but it also wouldn't be that shocking if they do just immediately work Blake Corum in quite a bit, and he ends up with a pretty good workload. So 4,800. Sort of tough to see him getting there if he is getting like 20% of the carries, or maybe 30% of the carries. Probably he's going to need more than a touchdown at 4,800. But I do think that he is in play at 4,800 at presumably pretty low ownership. I think last I checked, he's projected for under 10% ownership. Let me double check that. Yeah, the first source I'm looking at, sub 10% ownership. I'll look at a couple other sources too, but I think that pretty safe assumption given his price tag and that he's a backup running back. He's not going to be somebody that people are really prioritizing. So I do really like, or I shouldn't say I really like Blake Corum. I think that he's a viable low owned play, not like a huge priority for me, but I think that as far as the lower owned plays go on the slate, I think that he's a pretty good one. He made the short list of low owned plays for me. It is tough because of the 4,800. If he was more like 2,800, I'd be a lot more interested. 4,800 does ask kind of a lot if he doesn't have a big role, but he has some standalone value and possibly more than we are expecting standalone value, because we don't really know exactly how they're going to split it. But then on top of that, he has obviously amazing contingent value if anything does happen to Kyron Williams. So I do like Blake Corum. I do think that he's a pretty good bet on this game, but he also, pretty wide range of outcomes. Wouldn't be that shocking if he is used very little to start the year and that he has to work in kind of later on. Yeah, so around 10% ownership at all of the sources that I'm looking at. All right. I think that covers. I don't think I'm playing any Ronnie Rivers. I'm not going any different than just those 4 core running backs. Again, I think they're all pretty solid plays. My favorites are the Detroit running backs, who, and I should, let me check real quick. The Detroit running back, I think last I saw, it was a little bit lower ownership than I would have. Yeah. David Montgomery, sub 30%, Jahmyr Gibbs, sub 35%. So both, neither getting crazy high ownership. So I just like leaning in, play them together. I think that'll be a low owned combo. So that's going to be my approach to the running backs. All right, we'll move on to the wide receivers. Yeah, we will talk about some Demarcus Robinson. I'll go over some of these questions in a second. What's up, Christopher? Good to see you too. Appreciate you stopping by the channel. Chase, no, I don't think it's crazy to fade the quarterbacks and load up on skill players. I think it's a lot more viable tonight than it is when you've got, rushing quarterbacks on the slate. All right, receivers. I will go over, and I see your question, Anthony, favorite preferred FanDuel MVP. And the reason I'm hesitating is because I just wrote that like a couple hours ago, and I don't want to give a different answer than what I said elsewhere. So let me think about that for a second. All right, let me go check what I wrote previously, because I think that there are several that were pretty viable in my opinion. I know Sam Laporta was up there as one of my favorite FanDuel MVPs. There were several that I was kind of choosing between. So let me check that real quick for you, make sure I'm not giving you a different answer. Well, I'll get back to it. I'm going to start talking about the receivers first, but I think Sam Laporta certainly is up there. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think both of the Detroit running backs are going to be are pretty good low owned MVP candidates on FanDuel. I think the quarterbacks probably are going to get a decent amount of ownership, so they're not going to be contrarian options. So probably Sam Laporta. I think it's going to be low owned. All right. Wide receivers. I think we kind of know what we have in these wide receivers. It's a little bit interesting with the Rams guys. We've gotten so much chatter recently. I don't know, for those of you who don't play best ball, there was some chatter recently about like insiders, people who have seemingly insider information about the Rams, started saying they would draft Cooper Kupp ahead of Puka Nacua in best ball in season long, just based on what they know, which it was pretty vague. They didn't really explain why that was, but it was people who know people in the know were saying this stuff. I don't know how much I want to read into this vague stuff that people were saying about the two, but I thought it was kind of interesting. It's at least worth noting that apparently people who have connections with the team have some trepidation about Puka Nacua in season long. I don't know if he is. Yeah, what's up, Winky? Winky is an insider. Tell me what's going on, Winky. Why are people not excited about Puka this year? Because he was awesome last year. I think that I'm still going to be playing Puka. I'm not nervous enough about it that I'm gonna fade Puka. But it's at least interesting that there is some speculation that maybe Cooper Kupp is the wide receiver 1 this year. We do have him projected worse than Puka. I think that he has to be projected a little bit worse than Puka. Last year, though, when they were both healthy in games, when both of them played more than 50% snap share, they were only separated by 1% in terms of target share. It was 26% to 25% or something like that. They were both elite in terms of target share. So, I don't think you really need to worry about them. Yeah, they do cut into each other a little bit, but both were still elite in terms of target share last year. I think both very, very viable. Puka projected for 19.5, Cooper Kupp projected for 17.5. Both strong options. As far as Demarcus Robinson goes, and I gotta give Winky credit for this because Winky was actually early in the best ball season. Nobody was drafting Demarcus Robinson. Winky pointed out that it was kind of crazy that nobody was was drafting Demarcus Robinson. I got very much in on Demarcus Robinson in best ball. I think he's going to have a good year. He's still the wide receiver 3. I'm not expecting him to like be incredible this year. I don't think he's going to be the other, another Puka Nacua. He's a veteran, older receiver who broke out in very, very late in his career. So I don't think he's going to be awesome. But I think for a showdown slate, he is a wide receiver 3 who in their last playoff game ran 100% of the routes. They clearly love Demarcus Robinson. I think he's going to be out there for probably not 100%, but 80% plus, maybe 90% plus. I think he's going to be out there quite a bit as a wide receiver 3. And he had, starting in week 13, he had 4 consecutive games of double-digit fantasy points. Now, he never reached 20 fantasy points, so you look at his price tag of 5,000. I don't think he's going to need 20 fantasy points to get there. I think if he puts up, 12, 14 fantasy points, 15 fantasy points, you'd be happy with it. I don't know exactly what the threshold is, but I think he can outscore this 9.5 fantasy points that he's projected for. Like I said, 4 straight weeks starting week 13 last year, where he put up double-digit fantasy points. I think that is well within his bag. Again, he could score a touchdown here. So I do like Demarcus Robinson, and projected for like mid-teens ownership. So he's not getting a crazy amount of ownership. I think that he's very much in play. I would be overweight to the field on Demarcus Robinson, sort of a pay up to be contrarian relative to his projection. But yeah, I think very, very solid play. Let's see. Oh, interesting. Winky, our insider here, says plan is for Cooper to go back to wide receiver 1 and Puka to have the Robert Woods role. Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then wheels up for Cooper, and got to downgrade Puka if that is the case. So take that from our insider here. You can't play. I thought I had this on. If you wanted to pay for super chats, I mean, I'm answering questions anyway, so you don't need to send me super chats. But I thought that I had turned it on. Maybe I have a setting that I have wrong. I think he means the heyday of Robert Woods, wide receiver 2 role, but like clearly back up to Cooper Kupp. There was a year there where they were actually like pretty even, like as far as where we were drafting them in season long and stuff. Like they had a year where they were pretty even, and we expected the same coming into the next year, and then Cooper Kupp took over. So I'm assuming it was the year that Cooper Kupp took over, where Robert Woods was still kind of the wide receiver 2. I assume that's kind of the role that Winky's talking about there. But I don't know. Puka Nacua he was so good. He had one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen from a wide receiver. So I don't know that I fully buy it, even if they say that is the plan. I don't think you can really put it back in the box. When Puka was so good last year, why would you not just continue feeding him the ball? So I guess that's the rumor, but I think both are very viable. Amon-Ra St. Brown, projected for 21 fantasy points, has the highest projection of the slate, so he projects better than either of the quarterbacks. He's also 11,000 more expensive than anybody else on the slate. Obviously a great play if you can get up to him. Has that great matchup that we talk about with the Rams. I said that I'm playing it largely through the rushing game. That's largely because I don't think enough people are going to. More people are going to be playing it through the air, would be my guess. And I think the projections, I'll check that, but I'm pretty sure, hefty projected ownership on Amon-Ra St. Brown. No big surprise there. He's going to be with the quarterbacks. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be the kind of third player that everybody jams into lineups, and it's well deserved. He's obviously, he was a first-round draft pick in all of our fantasy leagues. He has a great matchup with the Rams. Could absolutely crush this slate. So hard to argue with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think I'll probably end up pretty close to the field on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Probably sub 50% ownership just because of the price tag and because I am going to be trying to leave salary on the table, but he'll be in over 30% of my lineups at least is what I guess with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So obviously a great play, great player, great matchup. Nothing really you can say negative about Amon-Ra St. Brown unless you want to say, yeah, he's pretty expensive. So that makes it a little bit tough to leave salary on the table when you play him. Jameson Williams, I mean, everything they said about him this offseason was really positive. I think that he does have a starting role to start the year for the Lions. Also has a great matchup. He's only 5,400. He's actually not projected for a crazy high. I think sub 25% ownership is what the last I saw. I'll look at updated ownership on JMO. But yeah, looking at around 25% ownership around the industry. That feels a little bit low for JMO, just given his range of outcomes. Okay, maybe 30% we're getting fairer, but I do think, like, in a vacuum, if I had to project who is likelier to make the winning lineup between Jameson Williams and Demarcus Robinson, I would say Jameson Williams is the likelier of the two to make the winning lineup. He is wide receiver 2 versus Demarcus Robinson. I'm comparing them because they're both a little bit lower owned and also similar in price. So I really like Demarcus Robinson, but I also really like Jameson Williams. He's going to be higher owned. He's slightly more expensive than Demarcus Robinson. I think that's deserved, though. He has the great matchup with the Rams defense. They're hyping him up all offseason. Sounds like they're pretty excited about the leap that they're expecting Jameson Williams to take this year. As long as he's healthy, he's a dynamic player. He can take one to the house. He's very, very much capable of big plays. So even though we haven't really seen it, he hasn't really put it together. It sounds like they think he could take a big step forward this year. They really want him to be that wide receiver too. So I am pretty into Jameson Williams tonight. Good. Michael says no MD. I have not looked at inactives yet. So let me look at inactives real quick to see if anything impactful happened with the inactives. You guys take a look at the inactive. Here, I'll pull it up. I gotta search for it real quick. I wasn't anticipating anything big here, but then there can always be like little surprises here. So I need to take a look real quick at inactives. Rams, nobody. Fantasy relevant inactive. And Lions inactives. Let me look real quick. And when I say fantasy relevant, I mean like offensive players. Obviously, there can be defensive players missing, and it can be fantasy relevant. But yeah, no receivers or running backs out, anything like that. That would be really impactful. Okay. I found one that said Khalif Raymond was inactive, but it was from January. So that's good to know. Khalif Raymond is not inactive. That would have changed things a bit. Yeah, no, I wasn't sure if you were talking about inactives, but it was just a reminder of like, oh yeah, I meant to look at that. I should probably start the show 5 minutes after inactives come out instead of right when inactives come out, because then I get distracted immediately and don't look at inactives. Khalif Raymond, so he's 2,800. Really interesting. Khalif Raymond, great as far as yards per route run last year. He was a super efficient wide receiver, but then he just didn't play all that much. He didn't have a ton of really great fantasy games. So he, seemed efficient while he was on the field, but you can kind of question, what's that really worth? Would it work out in a bigger sample size? But he had a couple games where he had like 10 to 13 fantasy points, something like that. So I think just here, I'll pull up his game log from last year. But he never really had any breakout games. So even though he was good from a yard per route run efficiency standpoint, he never really broke out last year. So looking at his 2023 game log, week 2 put up 11.7 fantasy points. He had one other game with 9.6 fantasy points in week 12 where he caught 5 balls for 90 yards. But then other than that, most of his games were duds. So it's hard to be too enthused, because you look at this game log and it's like even his best game last year, and he played every single game, even his best game was 11.7 points. Jameson Williams missed a lot of time last year. So it's really, I want to be enthused about him because he's only 2,800 and he's projected for single digit ownership. As I said, efficient in terms of yard per route run. I can't jam him into like 40% of my lineups, but I'm definitely going to be overweight. He is a player that I like. I think that he's good enough. He should be on the field somewhat. So yeah, I will be playing some of Khalif Raymond again tonight. Not like an absolute slam dunk, but I think that he's worth playing some. What's up, Julius? Good to see you too. Any other wide receivers that we're playing? You could play, I guess, Donovan Peoples-Jones. He was also just really, really bad last year. I think so. I talked Khalif Raymond like 2.22 yards per route run or something like that. Donovan Peoples-Jones, it was like 0.65. It was so bad. So really hard to get enthused about Donovan Peoples-Jones. With that said, I do think that he is the best minimum priced option on the slate. I don't really know that we have anybody else that's viable. I guess I'll maybe look again, but I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is the most viable of the min priced options. Should get on the field a little bit probably, but I don't even know that that's a guarantee. They did bring him back, so he wasn't very good. They traded for him mid-season last year. They decided to bring him back when they didn't need to, so I guess they like him enough to keep him around, but he was just not very efficient last year. Again, I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is the best min-priced option on the slate. He's going to come in at low ownership, so there are reasons to like him for a showdown slate. But just keep in mind, like he's probably not going to be out there a ton. He is the wide receiver 4 on the line, so it'll be just like here and there, just kind of a random little bit of playing time potentially. Not a huge priority for me. Tutu Atwell, kind of similar. I think I like Tutu a little bit better than Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think that he's a little bit more likely to just have a single play that breaks the slate. So I think I do like Tutu slightly better, but again, pretty thin play. I don't think either is likely to see a ton. You can see here, he's 2,400 projected for 2 fantasy points, whereas Donovan Peoples-Jones projected for 1.3 fantasy points at 200. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe Donovan Peoples-Jones, because of the price tag, I think he's less likely to hit, but he has the price tag where 1 touchdown is more likely to be enough. Like Tutu probably needs at least like 9 fantasy points at 2,400, whereas Donovan Peoples-Jones, a single like 5-yard touchdown is probably pretty good. I guess that's 7.5. It's pretty close between. I think both are relatively thin plays. I'll probably play a little bit, but I'm not really playing a ton of either of Donovan Peoples-Jones or Tutu. Jordan Whittington, I think he's a guy that people were drafting in like best ball and season long as a player that could be a prospect, but I think he's more of a contingent upside play. So Jordan Whittington, maybe if you're playing for like a blowout, where you think maybe they want to bring in rookies late in a blowout, you could play him. I think he's unlikely to play in this game, or at least unlikely to play more than a few snaps in this game. I think he's more of a like, if something happens to Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp, he could become fantasy relevant. Maybe he gets more run in that scenario. I don't think he's playing right away. I think they like what they have, obviously in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, but also Demarcus Robinson. I think those 3 are going to eat up the bulk of wide receiver snaps for the Rams. So it's pretty thin behind the top 3 on the Rams. I think Tutu Atwell would be my 4th favorite, and then Jordan Whittington, if you want to make the bet that he is like just talented enough and that they actually do want to use him right away, you could. He's only 2,000. Like I said, I think it's more likely that he is a replacement, like a backup replacement for Puka or Cooper Kupp. If somebody goes down, he's more likely to come in. I don't think they're planning on using him a lot today, but he showed some promise in the preseason. People got pretty hyped about Jordan Whittington. So if you want to get ahead of it and just think, yeah, he's going to play more than we're thinking he's going to, or just want to play it through the continued upside play of just like somebody goes down or there's a blowout and they decide to use some of their backups, there are ways for him to get on the field. He's not the worst $2,000 play, even though projected for half a fantasy point. Probably not going to see the field a whole lot. Could surprise us and see more than we're expecting. So yeah, as far as favorites go, I mean, I love the mid-price options. Jameson Williams, Demarcus Robinson, I think are very, very strong plays on this slate. I think that they're both have a wide range of outcomes. I think Jameson Williams has the clearer upside. I think Demarcus Robinson has enough upside to be in the winning lineup on a showdown slate. I think if I were playing one at captain, it would be JMO. I think Demarcus Robinson has like the upside that I anticipate him having at least is enough to be in the winning lineup in the flex, but I don't really see the like 25 point kind of upside where he could be in the winning lineup in the captain spot. Whereas I do see that for Jameson Williams. So I think Jameson Williams is a viable captain, will be low owned. He has that kind of, I don't think we've really seen it from him in the NFL, but I think he has that kind of slate breaking upside if he can stay healthy, make a couple of big plays. So if I'm playing one of them in the captain, it would be JMO of those 2, but I think both are pretty solid options who will come in at relatively low ownership. Demarcus Robinson will be lower ownership than Jameson Williams for sure. He also has that kind of, I think Jameson Williams still has a little bit of that excitement from, he's still pretty young. We haven't seen him a whole ton. He's missed a lot of time. I think people are still kind of excited about the upside of Jameson Williams, and I think they should be. I think that he could break out at some point. All right. Let's see. I think that I covered. Yeah, I think I covered. I'm not playing Tyler Johnson, so that is all of the wide receivers that I'm playing. And obviously those are my favorite. Of like they're not the likeliest hit. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. I think are all very solid. Higher upside plays, but you can see they project really well. They're going to be super highly owned. You kind of know what you're getting with them. Tight ends, yeah, Sam Laporta, only 7,400, a bit too cheap. I think he's going to go under-owned in the captain and MVP spots. I don't think people view him quite the same way as Amon-Ra St. Brown with that like huge upside. I think Sam Laporta is he's probably more likely to be more owned in the flex. But I think he's, one of the best projected tight ends in the NFL this year. I think he's hard to argue, 7,400 projected for 14.6 fantasy points. You can clearly see the upside with Sam Laporta. I don't know that there's that much more to say about him. I'll take a look at the ownership at various places real quick because I think it's pretty high, but it's not like, yeah, I mean, it's sub 50% is what I'm seeing. I like him at that number. I think that I will probably end up with around 50-60% Sam Laporta. I will be overweight to the field, and I really like him in the captain spot as well. I do think that he has the upside there. Andrew says, "Wait, this isn't on YouTube." I'm playing it on both. It's both YouTube and on X, so you can watch it on X. Of course, appreciate anybody coming in watching it on YouTube, trying to grow the channel. But yeah, it's on both YouTube and on X. You can find it here as well. All right. The more interesting, I mean, obviously Sam Laporta, very interesting. You're interested in playing him. He projects really well. He's a great tight end, top season long tight end this year. He's a great play at 7,400. But then the Rams are sort of interesting from a game theory, from a DFS low ownership perspective. I don't think we're seeing a ton of ownership on the Rams tight ends. They're a little bit cheaper. Colby Parkinson getting some ownership, which is good. Like he should be getting some ownership. He's only 3,200. He is the presumptive tight end one on the Rams. We've seen Tyler Higbee excel for periods in that role in the past. So I think we're sort of hopeful that maybe Colby Parkinson will come in and have those spike weeks that we've seen Tyler Higbee have in the past. Certainly capable of. He's 3,200. I think that he's a solid play. But he's projected for like 25% ish ownership, kind of in that range. So some sites have him lower 20s. So I don't know. He's ownership is kind of all over the place. I think that he'll get some ownership, but I don't think we're going to see a ton of ownership going to Davis Allen, which makes him sort of interesting to me. As you can see here, projected for just 2.3 fantasy points. He's 1,600. I don't think we really know how that tight end rotation is going to work out yet for the Rams. So we're assuming it's going to be Colby Parkinson. I think, indications are that he's going to lead the committee, but maybe it's 60-40. Maybe we see Davis Allen come in a little bit more than we're anticipating. Davis Allen also like 1.44 yards per route run last year, which is pretty good for a tight end. So he was efficient when he was on the field last year. So I kind of like the idea of playing Davis Allen too. I think he's going to be much lower owned. I think he's cheap enough. Like he could just score a touchdown. He's a big tight end. So I do like Davis Allen quite a bit. He's one of my favorite contrarian plays on the slate. We don't have a ton of great like contrarian value plays on this slate. So you gotta play the ones that are there. I think Davis Allen is one of the better bets, who's cheaper than like the Demarcus Robinson, Jameson Williams range. So I do have some interest in Davis Allen. Brock Wright, you could. I guess he's cheap enough that one touchdown could do it. I don't think he's going to see a ton of playing time. Mostly a contingent play if something happens to Laporta. I guess we saw that after they traded TJ Hawkins. I think Brock Wright actually had a great game or two. So maybe if Sam Laporta goes down, if you want to play the contingent upside game with Brock Wright, but in a regular game script, not going to see the field a ton. We know that he's obviously not going to be fighting Sam Laporta for playing time. So he's mostly a contingent upside play, but he is cheap enough that a single touchdown, sometimes his backup tight ends come in for 20% of snaps and just score a random touchdown. He's capable of doing that. He'll probably have a touchdown or two this year. Could happen this week, and if it does, you're going to want him in your lineup. But it's probably sub 10% chance that Brock Wright scores a touchdown. So I don't know if the ownership is unfair on him, but again, he's going to be low owned. He's playable. I prefer playing through Davis Allen because I think he has more upside to just have a bigger role than we're anticipating. So I think he has extra outs, ways to get there. What's up, Baldy? Good to see you. Katz asks, if you're going heavy Detroit with no quarterback, do you like Laporta or Montgomery at captain? Uh, Probably Montgomery. I like both of those captains, but probably in that case, I would prefer Montgomery. Hope that Laporta gets there more through like PPR, gets there. Doesn't absolutely break the slate, because if Laporta really gets there in a big way, then probably he would bring Goff along with him. So yeah, I think that in that case, if I'm doing full on heavy Detroit, no quarterback, I'd prefer to have Montgomery in the captain spot, because he can obviously get there on his own, just rush in a couple quarterbacks, get to that 200-yard bonus rushing, et cetera, et cetera. Arcathel says, I lost every single bet I made today. I didn't make any bets. I did a card on underdog and got crushed on that. I think didn't go very well for me. DFS was very, very hit or miss for me today. I had some, I played a good amount of Rashid Shaheed, which sort of hit, but a lot of stuff just did not work out for me today. So didn't end up with any big lineups. All right, we covered tight ends, and I think I forgot to change the yeah, I didn't move this over here. All right, so we moved to tight ends. I think I just finished talking about the tight ends. Sam Laporta, obviously the best bet. He's only 7,400, very fairly priced. I think you can certainly play Colby Colby Parkinson. Yes, Colby, you can certainly play. If you haven't noticed, I am still dragging. I have been like sleepless for a week straight at this point, and I am starting to feel it in a big way. So hoping to go to bed early tonight so I can wake up and have energy for my 11 a.m. Show tomorrow. So yeah, planning to have a good night of sleep tonight. But I am to the point where sometimes the names are just like feels wrong when I'm trying to say the names. But yes, you can certainly play Colby Parkinson. I think that he is a good play, but I think Davis Allen is the more interesting play of the group, because I think he could, find his way with the bigger split than we were anticipating. I think he's talented. I think he could score a touchdown. So of the low owned option, I think Davis Allen is pretty interesting. And then finally, DST and kicker, always in play. Obviously, I used to target defenses against Jared Goff all the time. It just felt like after he left the Rams and Sean McVay, I kind of thought he was the type of quarterback who was really reliant on his coach, and who was going to be starting to make a lot of errors. And it works sometimes, but I don't think that it's necessarily the best play. I think that he's actually proven himself to be a lot better, smarter quarterback than I anticipated him playing. I still think, it's fine to play the Rams. I don't think they're a very good defense, but typically defenses and kickers go under owned like almost every showdown slate. You see the kickers come in lower owned than they should. So again, I think that they're all four sides are solid plays. I will say, got to give a shout out to the legend, Jake Bates, UFL legend, was really damn good. So for those of you who did not watch the UFL, I don't know what's wrong with you not watching the UFL, but he was honestly awesome. He can boot it in from 65. He had some just crazy kicks in the UFL, the Detroit kicker. So I will definitely have some interest in playing some Jake Bates tonight. He was absolutely awesome. And I think they're going to be able to score quite a bit. So hoping that they score touchdowns the way I'm playing the slate, but still, I'll play some lineups with Jake Bates. I think he's a very talented kicker. And sometimes, talented offenses can just get down to the red zone and sputter. So definitely interested in both kickers, both defenses, but shout out to Jake Bates. All right, move down to questions and lineups. I'll build some lineups here, answer any questions you have. So if any of you have questions, happy to answer those questions. Looks like we got about 45 minutes to lock, so I'll go for maybe another 15 minutes on this show or so. Looks like we might be looking at overlay. We've got 45 minutes, so it's very possible that this fills, but currently pretty far away from filling. All right. So I've talked about, I like the idea of building for both Lions running backs in the same lineup, and even with one of them in the captain spot. So I'll try that first with I'll do a David Montgomery captain with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think already we're getting a little bit different by doing that combo. Let's see, what can I do now? If I do throw in Davis Allen into this lineup, then I'm just like totally, that's as much as I need to be contrarian. There are not going to be a ton of lineups that start with this trio. And now you can see I've got 10,000 left per player, so I can just jam Amon-Ra St. Brown. I can't quite do it. I guess I could do Amon-Ra with Goff. Cup, we're leaving 500 on the table. I think we pulled enough uniqueness levers by playing Montgomery and Gibbs together and then throwing Allen in there that 500 is plenty to leave on the table for this particular lineup. I think, often I'll leave more salary on the table if I'm playing a lot of chalk and not doing anything, not pulling any levers in terms of getting different elsewhere. I'll just leave a ton of salary on the table. But I think in this case, that is enough. Is Tom Kennedy still on the team? Let me take a look at the projection. I don't think I am not considering playing Tom Kennedy. I feel like he would be in the projections. I had not thought about him. I don't think that he's somebody that I'm playing. Yeah, so this would be, reasonable lineup. Now, what else can we do? I mean, we talked about those kind of mid-price options. What opto am I using? I'm still kind of learning to use it, but I've been using the Roto Grinders opto. Seems pretty straightforward. I still don't quite have the hang of it, if I'm being honest. Maybe I'll put out some videos on how I set things up after I figure out how to use the Roto Grinders opto, but I'm still very much learning. I've been so swamped with all my content this week that I honestly have not been able to spend a lot of time on my own lineups. Like today, I ran a train of lineups in the main contest. I was so busy with all my other stuff. So I'm hoping, I think I'm going to start to be able to get ahead of it after tonight. I'm going to write my showdown slate for tomorrow night tonight, and then I'll be ahead on content finally. But I've been so behind, just slammed, not sleeping, not able to learn how to use all of the tools everywhere. But I've been playing around with the Roto Grinders opto. I think it's a pretty good one. So I'll probably try to learn how to use that one. All right, what else can we do? What other kind of unique lineups can we do? I mean, I guess I talked a little bit about playing a JMO lineup. Let's try that. JMO in the captain. 8,100 in the captain spot. That's not bad. Then you could play, Goff is the next starting point. Now, obviously, you play Goff, so is everybody else. If you play Jameson Williams in the captain spot, everybody's going to play Goff. So maybe the better approach is to use more of the salary cap without using Goff. So maybe you'd play Jameson Williams scores 2 touchdowns, and then Matthew Stafford spreads the ball around a little bit. So here you could play Stafford with Puka and Demarcus Robinson. So Stafford throws for 3 touchdowns, and 2 of them go to Puka. 1 of them goes to Demarcus Robinson. Goff throws for 2 touchdowns. Both of them go to Jameson Williams. Suddenly, this looks pretty good. But now you got to use most of the salary so that you can't fit Goff in there also, because if he's throwing 2 touchdowns, he's going to put up a fair number of fantasy points. So maybe now you want to use Jahmyr Gibbs. And so I think I want to use closer to the full salary caps. Now I could use Goff. Stafford throw 3. Jamie would probably still outscore him in that case. So I think this would be a viable large field contest lineup that I don't think would be super high owned. I'm debating whether this is. So in this case, yeah, JMO scores a couple touchdowns. Doesn't need to. Yeah, I think that this would work. Stafford spreads the ball around. Puka, Demarcus Robinson, Cooper Kupp, they all can make it in. They can rack up PPR points, even if it's not 3 touchdowns. So there are ways for that to get there. Jahmyr Gibbs runs one in on top of JMO, scoring 2 through the air. So I think that this would be a viable lineup, a way to play JMO in the captain spot without immediately playing Goff in the lineup. I think that's viable. Anything else? Any other types of lineups? I will probably take you up on that, Jesse. Appreciate that. Marquis says Amon-Ra over 80 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it's a great matchup. I think that's a pretty good bet. I don't know if I would take it at even odds, but maybe I'm not a bettor, so I guess I don't know if that's would be a fair even bet, because he's probably going to score more than 8 touchdowns this year. So maybe he is more likely than not to score. I don't know. He put a lot of multiple touchdown games. Yeah, I haven't thought about this enough. Ooh, what's up, Jackson? Good to see you. Ran a 150 train in the first showdown. Yeah, it's brutal, especially now learning new stuff, learning new tools has been slowing me down in creating content, and but it's all still a lot of fun. Honestly, can't complain. It's been so much fun getting into NFL Week 1 and just being able to watch all of my best ball players crash and burn. Um, Fretchick says, only doing 20 maxes here. Thoughts on focusing on one type of build? I'm okay losing everything to try and win. Yeah, if you're okay losing everything, then I have no issue with focusing on one type of build. So, yeah, if you want to do 20 Detroit onslaught lineups, that's totally fine. You understand that you're taking a big risk by making that assumption. If you want to preserve your bankroll, you probably want to spread out the types of lineups you make. But if you're okay with losing everything, then yeah, why not just, play into if you just think you have a good read on a slate, play a type of build that not a lot of people are going to do. Sure, lean into it. Nothing wrong with that. Appreciate that, Lily. I mean, I'm working at several sites, so I'm working with Roto Grinders Fantasy Points 4for4, and then I got to kind of save some of my content for my own site, which honestly I'm excited about continuing on with my YouTube channel. I was a little bit hesitant to take a full-time job anywhere because it is kind of more exciting to do your own thing. So I kind of like the setup I have right now, where I'm working with a lot of really talented people at a lot of different companies, and then kind of doing my own thing on the side. I'm enjoying this setup. Um, what do you think Cup in the MVP on FanDuel will be owned? My guess would be single digits on Cup on FanDuel. Not by much though. Like I think he'll probably be one of the top 5 owned MVP FanDuel MVPs. But yeah, I think close to 10% ownership on Cup. I'm checking, and it looks like that is spot on. He's going to be right around as far as the projection goes, projected for around 10% ownership. I think that's a fair projection for Cup. Generally, I think the quarterbacks are going to be the highest owned. They are going to project the best. So in optos, that's like the first place the opto is going to want to give you in the MVP. They're going to want to put the highest scoring projected player in your lineup goes into the MVP spot right away, the highest projection. So I think generally I like getting away from quarterbacks on FanDuel unless they are rushing quarterbacks because they project the best, and they optos want to put them in the MVP spot because they project the best. But I think it makes sense to. Is Tom Kennedy going to play at 200? I don't think so. Let me take a look at Tom Kennedy's game logs. Yeah, I'm not anticipating that Tom Kennedy is going to play at all. Didn't play at all last year. Is he even in the player pool? I guess he played some 2 years ago. I don't know why people keep bringing up Lions Tom Kennedy. He doesn't have a projection, so I'm making the assumption that he's not playing at all. But I don't know if you've heard something different elsewhere. I have not heard anything suggesting that Tom Kennedy is going to play on this slate. So not somebody that I'm playing. I think it's a fairly thin bet in general. He's their 4th wide receiver, Andrew says. All right, you're seeing. All right, let me take a look elsewhere because I'm not seeing him in the fantasy points projections. He didn't play at all last year. I don't really see any reason to think he's going to play much, if at all. I suppose he could come in, in the 4th quarter in garbage time. Maybe he's a garbage time kind of play. All right, here's a very, very low projection. Actually projected for better than Jordan Whittington on this site. I don't know. I think he's a fairly thin bet. But I guess if he's the wide receiver 4, you think he could play. Sure. I think maybe they'd be more likely to go to wide receiver, or sorry, 2 tight end sets than play Tom Kennedy after he didn't play a single time all last year. So yeah, I don't think I'm playing it. Okay, Dylan says he was elevated off practice squad just yesterday. All right, that's interesting. So I guess he's a contingent bet. I don't think he plays unless somebody gets hurt or if they want to bring in the backups. But that's at 200, I guess he's viable. I think I prefer Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I guess that makes him at least that's funny, Ron. Yes, you can definitely play Cup and Nakua together. Like I said, last year it's like 25 and 26% target share in the games that they both played more than 50% of snaps. So yeah, I definitely think that they are viable to play together. Um, it's going to be expensive, obviously. I think if you play both Cup and Nakua, you're probably going to want Stafford in the lineup. It's tough because they can like I've said, they because of the scoring dynamics, they do score more points than Stafford on every play. So maybe one of them just gets there because he gets to 100 yards and 8 catches, and they're all kind of a lot of dink and dunk catches. There are ways for them to both get there without Matthew Stafford. But also, if they put up 100 yards, that's also 100 yards that goes to Matthew Stafford. So it makes it a little more likely he gets there. I would probably, if I play Cup and Nakua, no, I think you can play him out without Stafford. I take it back. I think it's viable. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying, Derek. I don't think he sees the field unless it's like a blowout, an injury situation, maybe. But in general, I'm not expecting him to see the field. Thank you, Poker MJ. Appreciate that. Do I think Davis Allen will get many targets? I don't think he'll get many targets. I think like the likeliest scenario. So again, we're getting back to I'm talking mostly for large field GPPs here. The likeliest scenario is Colby Parkinson is a starting tight end. We see Davis Allen on the field for maybe 20% of snaps, and he sees 2-ish targets. I mean, I don't think we're expecting him. Actually, I can bring up the projection. Davis Allen projected for 1.44 fantasy points. That's one reception for 11 yards. They're projecting him to score a touchdown about once in every 10 games. But the reason I like him isn't because I think it's super likely that he, plays more snaps than we're anticipating, but I think that it's more likely than a lot of other players who are not getting a ton of ownership because we haven't really seen how they want to run this tight end rotation. I think that there's a little bit more volatility in it. So I think maybe there's a 15% chance that we see Davis Allen come in for 35% plus snap share, and that he is running routes a significant amount, because again, he 1.44 yards per route run last year was actually pretty good as a receiving tight end when he was on the field. So I just think that it's more likely that he's in there getting some run as a receiver running routes than the projections would indicate, and that the ownership would indicate as a result. So I like him a lot for large field GPPs. But is it actually likely? I don't think it's I think it's less likely than 50%. I guess it's more likely that he does not see a significant number of snaps, but I'd say it's more likely than the field is anticipating. So for large field GPPs, I think he's a really strong bet. Any other questions? Anything you want me to try to build before we close it out? Got about 5 minutes left before I need to start making my own lineups. But happy to answer any questions. I guess we can see Cup and Nakua lineup. So maybe we try. Who do we want to put? Let's do a Laporta in the captain spot, because I talked about liking Laporta at captain. Now we do Cup and Nakua. We're using a lot of salary, so we can play some of those less expensive bets. Actually, we still have 6,500 left per player. I'll throw in my guy Jake Bates, UFL legend Jake Bates, now the kicker for Detroit. Then we'll go. Man, we can really put together and still play Amon-Ra there. 3,900 left over. Now here's where you could play Parkinson. So Parkinson, you play him, you're leaving 700 on the table. But what if you do? So this would be a lineup where you throw Davis Allen in there. Everybody else is going to play Parkinson. What if it's just Davis Allen who scores the 10-yard touchdown instead of Colby Parkinson, because he gets some run in the red zone? He's not out there a ton, but he's out there in a package in the red zone. He scores a touchdown. Suddenly he's outscoring everybody else that you could have played who's more expensive than him. It's kind of interesting. This is a no quarterback lineup. But again, my general, the way that I think I'm going to play this slate, the most unique, the most frequent way that I'm playing it different than everybody else, is just going double running back, primarily from Detroit. Probably, it's a sort of long shot. It's not that long of a shot, though. They're both project really well. I think they could just run all over them. Let's see. Appreciate you, OA. What about this lineup on DraftKings? Montgomery at captain, Gibbs, Goff, Laporta, Cup, and Jameson Williams. I'm assuming you're using most of your salary there. Could it work out? You've got Goff with Laporta and JMO, Cup, Gibbs. Yeah, I think that's Goff. Wait. Yeah, Goff with. So you only have Cup from the Rams in this lineup. So this is I think that this lineup could work out. This is a full Lions onslaught lineup with just Cup from the Rams. You need Montgomery he's the cheapest of everyone except for JMO. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the highest scoring of the group because he is the cheapest. Yeah, I think that looks like a viable lineup to me. Stack is, but I have not built my lineups yet, so don't know yet. I have no idea. This question I always struggle with. How many points? Like I don't even remember what won like the last slate. How many points does it take to win on DraftKings? Probably 100-ish. I honestly I can't remember what it usually is. I'd have to look at past slates. Can I log into my FanDuel account? Yeah, I can try to get into FanDuel. I don't have a ton of money there, but yeah, I actually FanDuel for these slates, and I've just stopped playing it due to time. Because I've been so busy. Now I just don't even know how to use the FanDuel site. I've been playing on my phone. I'll skip. How do I even access fantasy? Got to specify now. Uh-oh. I want to show everybody my password, so give me a second here. See if I can pull it up off screen and then bring it in. Oh, I went the wrong way. Went to Facebook. All right, I'll pull up FanDuel quickly. But again, if you did not catch the beginning of the show, going to be going live with Adam Ship My Money Share on this channel tomorrow at noon Eastern. Very excited to be working with Adam again. All right, let's build a FanDuel lineup. Single game. Oh, is this for tomorrow though? Okay, so this is for tonight. All right, so for FanDuel, the highest scoring player in your lineup you need to have in the MVP spot. So that's always a difference for FanDuel versus, I don't have my Flannelverse logo yet. I have not switched it. That's how little I play on FanDuel. I have not even changed my avatar. Big difference on FanDuel versus DraftKings is the highest scoring player in your lineup needs to be the player in the MVP spot because there is no salary multiplier. So you need to always factor that in. That's one of the reasons a lot of people want to play quarterbacks in the MVP spot, why the optimizer is going to give you quarterbacks in the MVP spot because they project the best. But it'd be fun to build. I'll go with we talked about Laporta in the MVP spot being a little bit of a way to get different. Now you can see here on FanDuel, I'm going to throw in kicker. Not going to get a ton of ownership. They usually don't get enough ownership on FanDuel. DeMarcus Robinson, only 7,000. Pretty nice price there on FanDuel. Have not talked about Sione Vaki at all. I don't think he's going to play at all today, so probably don't need to talk about him. Converted defensive player. Okay, so now we have a ton of money left over per player. So I've gone cheap with all of my players. Now I can just throw in Amon-Ra, Goff. Oh, yeah, Amon-Ra, Goff. And we're leaving 3,500 on the table with this lineup. Goff throwing a couple touchdowns to Laporta. Amon-Ra getting another one. I think that's Laporta could still outscore Goff, and that we now have. In case you didn't notice on FanDuel, we get the bonus, the 100-yard bonus, 300-yard for quarterback, the same bonuses that they had on DraftKings. I don't love that. I liked it better when we did not have that bonus. But it's there. It's also half PPR instead of full PPR. So here now you have to look at. So we're leaving 3,500 on the table. So who could I upgrade DeMarcus Robinson to, or who could I upgrade Jake Bates to? Like, is it actually realistic that he could outscore everybody who is more expensive than him up to 12,500? So with Kyron there, we would need Jake Bates to outscore Kyron. Yeah, I think that that's viable. It's obviously it's not the likeliest scenario, but I think that you can envision a scenario where Jake Bates outscores Kyron. He has to outscore Jahmyr Gibbs. If it just ends up being more of a slog, or the running backs just don't do that much. But we do have this is soft pricing on FanDuel today. So if you play Jake Bates in this lineup, you need him to outscore all of Dave Montgomery, Jameson Williams, Cooper Kupp, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyron Williams. I think it's a little bit of a thin bet. So I think I think that that's a little bit tough to want to have Jake Bates in the lineup with all of those options there. Could work, not out of the realm of possibility, but to beat all of those players feels like a little bit of a long shot in a game that has the highest total of the entire weekend. So I'd be more inclined to go to like that's not leaving a ton of salary on the table. Maybe go down from Amon-Ra to Puka. Now we're leaving 1,500. It's a little bit better. I think this looks like a viable, large field tournament lineup, leaving 1,500 on the table. I think it'll still be duped a fair amount just because it's all chalky plays. But we also have Laporta and MVP, which is going to go a little bit low owned. We've got the obvious correlations with Goff to Laporta. So I think this is a viable FanDuel lineup. Let me go back to chat. All right. Yeah, FanDuel locks you out. Like some people can't even access their FanDuel account. It's I don't know, man. Don't know what they're doing over there. I have not heard anything about Jordan Whittington starting the slot for LA. I don't think I'd be shocked if he starts tonight. I think he's more of a contingent, like down the line, could start later in the year, could like win a spot or just get there through injury. But no, I don't think Jordan Whittington is starting tonight. Is it Isaiah Likely? Wait, is what Isaiah Likely? Oh, I get it. It was a pun. Yeah, glad we're on the same page there, Rody. Favorite DraftKings captain. Yeah, I've talked about a few that I like. I do really like Sam Laporta. I like both of doing the approach of playing both of the running backs from Detroit in the same lineup with one of them at captain in particular, I think is a pretty solid bet. I do like Jameson Williams at captain. I think he's going to be fairly low owned there. So I think and I think he has the upside to pay it off. Yeah, I like David Montgomery at captain. Again, I think that's going to be fairly low owned, and they could just run all over the Rams. So I'd say those are some of my favorites. Obviously, I mean, Amon-Ra, fantastic captain. But I think he's going to have a ton of ownership, even with that price tag, and he makes kind of limits what you can do with the rest of your lineup. Could work. I think you can play him there. Obviously, he's going to be one of the better bets at captain, but also just going to be super high owned. All right. I think that is going to do it for this show. I got to go make some lineups. But again, tomorrow at noon Eastern, 11 Central Time, going to be back on this channel with Adam. We're going to go over the Monday night slate, talk about that for, I don't know how long that show is going to be. We have not gotten into all of the logistics of the show, but really looking forward to doing that one with Adam tomorrow. So thank you all for hanging out for this show. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Would appreciate it. Really looking forward to doing Showdown content the rest of the season with you all. Thank you. Catch you later.